Hi, readers and authors. Lydia Michaels here, and I have the extreme pleasure of chatting with Mimi Flood today. And I'm so excited for those of you who don't know Mimi. She is a contemporary romance author. She's the author of her newest, One Night with Frankie, which we're going to talk so much about because I'm super excited. That checks off all of my boxes personally as a reader. She is also the author of The Long Weekend, The Way It Was, with Reservations Part 1. And she was the Long Weekend was actually the romance finalist in the 2019 Kobo Emerging Writers Prize, which is amazing. I think it's really interesting too, Mimi, that you have a background in film studies, and I have some things to talk about with that too, because I think it's really relevant to how we produce our work and create stories and where sort of our knowledge base stems from. So that's really interesting. You also have a minor in creative writing, which I'm totally envious of. And you are coming to us from Montreal. So welcome, Mimi. I'm so excited for this. This is so great. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me.
Thank you so much for doing this. This is like an unbelievable honor. I'm totally fangirling. So to hear you say those nice things about me makes me feel like I'm on a cloud right now. I've mentioned, I heard about you years ago from our friend Cassidy London, who, I mean, gushed about you and you know, I mean, she crushes on you for sure, as do I now.
Mutual crush with her.
Yeah, she's easy to crush on.
Right?
Yeah, she's fantastic. And yeah, so she told me about you, and then I started getting into your books, and then I started following you, and you really are this magnificent resource for writers. Not only are you, I mean, best-selling, you know, award-winning, you don't even need to know that. You read your books and you just freaking know it because you're so talented and you have a
That's so
genuine.
incredibly nice. Thank you so much.
It's real. Some people are like, you know, but you, I read, I feel like I'm talking to a girlfriend when I read your books. You know, I haven't read all of them.
What a nice thing to say. Thank you.
No, I mean, I haven't read all of them, but yeah, there's like 40, right? So I'm gonna have to catch up a little bit. It's my goal.
I haven't read all of them. I forget them though. I have to
I can imagine. I don't know how I have 4 and I can't even remember them all. So I don't know how you do it. But yeah, so that's it. So then when I found out about Write 10K in a Day, I was like, well, there's no one better because I'd already been following your advice and your tips on Instagram and things. And the book, I mean, to me, it's like the Bible of being an author because you nailed it. You nailed it. And I've told several people to get it, to read it. It will change your life heavily, not just it's not like this sugar coated thing. It will change so much about how you view everything. And I mean, yeah, anyway, we'll talk about it, but like, if you haven't read the book, you need to read the book. It is so deliciously wonderful. And I actually, it's rare that I want to reread a nonfiction book. And I really do have to reread it like a couple times.
Thank you. That is like amazing, amazing, amazing. Like I can't even tell you. There's so many personal things that went into the 10K series, and it's just. I apologize if you guys hear my dogs.
Oh, you'll hear mine. Don't worry.
Friday afternoon, so people are moving about and they're barking. But you know, it's just so much went into it. And I mean, currently, so the audio is coming for it, and I am doing the recording myself, and that's a whole new. I mean, I'm complete fish out of water there. Like I do not know how to do that. Everything is trial and error, and you know, I just feel like I've never liked my voice, so like to hear it for like over 10 hours is just
no, I guess it's different. You have to hear yourself talking.
Yeah, like nobody likes their own voice. So it's, I mean, like it's a process to edit that and everything, but even listening back to my own words and my own theories, it's really important for me to hear that again. And I'm so excited for the audio because it's a quick reference to go back to, because I do think Write 10K in a Day has so many helpful things that you want to be able to access. And I always tell, you know, my followers, whoever they are, readers, authors, it doesn't matter, family, you know, in-laws, it doesn't matter, whoever's following me, I always tell them, like, you're going to see on my media wall various things. Like I always tell them there's a heavy dose of feminism and, entrepreneurship and humor and sex appeal, like these are all things that I'm, crazy for. So you see that stuff, but it's really, and I hope that this came off with 10K because it was really important for me to make it clear was that I'm not writing the book as an expert. I'm writing the book as someone who can say, humbly say, I've made a ton of mistakes. I've been at this for 15 years. I've made a ton of mistakes. There was so much time wasted on things that necessarily didn't matter and money wasted. And to give back to a community that's given me so much, I want to be able to say, hey, here's my take on that. If you want someone who's got experience, I'll give you my opinion. It may not be yours. It may not be the majority's opinion, but take it for what it is. This is where I can say, looking back, like looking over the situation from 15 years and make these, calls for my personal benefit, but everyone's unique. So I really, there's so much in Write 10K. And I think that a lot of it is theory. And when I say it's theory, I mean, it's everything that is in that book. I firmly believe. The moment it was published today, still believe it. That may change and evolve over time as technology changes and the industry changes, but I do believe it. But that doesn't mean that I'm mastering it. I mean, what we do is so complex and hard. It is no longer just writing stories. It is, an entire business you're running. You're running a company. You are, as we talk about in Write 10K in a Day, you're the boss, you're the HR rep, you're the accountant who has to okay the budget. There's moments where we just don't feel like dealing with those things. There's moments there where we know we're being fiscally irresponsible and we know that we might not be doing what's best for our brand, but it's really hard to wrangle all those characters in that we play in this business and actually take accountable control for what we're doing. And that's really what Write 10K is about when we come to the business section. But it is 3 parts, as you know. But before we go on and on about more 10K, I want to talk a little bit about One Night with Frankie, because I'm super excited about this. And I like going back and forth, like Write 10K it's nonfiction, it's the business side of things, which is so relevant for our authors, but authors are also readers. So let's pull off that for a minute and go over here into a little bit about One Night with Frankie. So One Night with Frankie came out last month, right?
Yep, July.
Yep. So in July, just came out. I haven't read it yet, but I'm so excited. And it jumped when I was reading all this about what it is. I was like, oh, this is going like hopping onto my TBR list because it is, no, I'm super excited. Like first of all, it's a standalone, which I really like because if you're like me, you don't have a lot of time to read. And like when we read for pleasure, you kind of, it's so hard for me these days to actually take on a series or a trilogy. So I appreciate a standalone. I like a one and done, nice, neat story. I'm really into that. It's contemporary, but here is my catnip. You have an age gap. Ding, 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 ding. That is like my ultimate. Oh, I can't get enough. Actually, the next Jasper Falls book I have. Check. The next Jasper Falls book that I have coming out, which is Pining for You, that's an age gap. So I mean, I call them May, December. I'm not sure many like readers know that that's what they're called.
That feels like an aged term. I don't know. Maybe
like my grandmother used to say. I actually, you know what? I was reading your blurb, and I noticed that like you called it age gap, and in my blurb it has May, December, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna learn from Mimi and cross that off because I feel like it's a more recognizable term. Because isn't that what we do as authors? I mean, we totally observe what everyone's doing. And, we beg, borrow, and steal all these like little pieces of advice and try to work out what's going to work for us. But what works for Mimi might not work for Lydia. And, everyone's different. And it's really very, very hard to get that through our heads sometimes.
Yes.
But back to One Night with Frankie, which I will be spending soon. So Henry is a older man.
Mhm.
It's a small town romance. Your town's called Oak White Bay, which I love the sound of that. It sounds like a Dawson's Creek kind of stuff.
Totally, totally.
Love that. Can't get enough.
I may or may not have been watching Dawson's Creek at the time or rewatching it at the time.
Well, you know, it's so funny because I definitely do that. Like I was telling my daughter, I know you have two daughters, right?
Yes, 5 and 7.
Okay, so I have a 50, she just turned 15 years.
Mm.
And you know, I made her watch 90210, the originals this year. And I was like, you have to, you just the angst, the drama,
Yeah,
you know, the life
yeah,
lessons of don't
yeah.
take diet pills and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you have to have all these things.
Right.
So she like loved it. And then Brenda left and she was devastated. She's
Of
like,
course.
wait, what? So she said to me the other day, she goes, I'm really missing Brenda Walsh. What can we watch? And I'm like, I don't know. Cause you know, we've done Gilmore Girls 100 times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's try Dawson's Creek because I've never watched it.
Oh, what? Oh my gosh.
Never.
Yeah.
So I'm literally a Dawson's Creek virgin and I'm going in. I'm like 5
Okay, so
episodes in.
you haven't watched any of it.
I watched 5 episodes.
Okay.
So
It's as I rewatched it, like I was obsessed. I was obsessed. People would call me during Dawson's Creek. I would hang up on them. This is back with cell phones, right? I would be like, "What are you doing?" And I would hang up. So I rewatched it with my husband, who was also a fan but won't admit it. And it's really cheesy at times, and it's
yeah.
a little bit heavy on the cheese and the drama. But it's hard to binge watch because you're like, didn't they just go through this?
Yeah.
Like, a little bit. But there's a lot of things. Pacey kind of stuck out as a better character this time around. Older, like I still like him.
Yeah.
That's the weird part. He travels well throughout the years, so
Yeah.
it's a bit different. But yeah, sorry, just
Isn't that neat though how like your perspective changed? Like I haven't watched
Totally.
so like the 90210. We did 10
Yes.
seasons of it. And like I was a 90210 freak when I was younger. I just
Right.
loved it. Loved anything Aaron Spelling made. Like just yes.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
drama, all the small
Yeah.
town, all the close-knit communities.
Yeah.
So when I was rewatching it, I was amazed at how much I disliked like the golden boy Brandon. Like he was the good guy. And I'm like, he's
Yeah.
such a chauvinist prick. Like
Totally.
what a jerk. And I'm like, you know, telling my daughter, I'm like, don't you ever date someone who is that like that?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I loved like Steve Sanders, who I couldn't stand when I was a teenager. I'm like, okay, Steve, I get it. Like you're just screwed up, but you have like this good, what you're doing is right. So like, I get it with the Percy thing. Like I do. And I think that it's funny how that changes.
Yeah.
You know, so I love that like you pull so much from television and everything, because I think that's huge. Like right now, I'm so big into my Jasper Falls, you know, like I'm loving being back in small town romance because I have my McCullough Mountain series, which, you know, also is in Jasper Falls, but that was just the McCullough family. And now we're getting the whole town in Jasper Falls. So you get a lot of cameos from my previous.
Okay.
Super fun. But it's funny because, like you said, you may or may not have been watching a lot of Dawson's Creek while writing One Night with Frankie. And I think it's funny because when I was a huge Game of Thrones fan, always will be, love it, like obsessed. And when I was on big Game of Thrones binges, because, you know, you'd watch it, then it'd be like a long break and you'd have to binge it in that time and re-up to watch it again. So I was constantly watching it. And me and my husband would always laugh because we'd say, like, after you're done watching Game of Thrones, you know, you turn off the TV and you go to put something else on and you're like, well, this person's annoying. Why aren't they just chopping that character's head off? Like you have all this like bloodlust.
Yes.
So like when I was
you have to like clean your palate and like watch something really, really tamed, like Dawson's Creek, to kind of balance, because you get a little bit psychotic. Yeah. I know.
Yeah, I mean, like I wrote Hurt, which is like a dark psychological thriller when I was watching Game of Thrones, and I'm like, okay, now we're gonna go all the way over here. I'm all about Dawson's Creek right now because I'm like, okay, gotta get in that right headspace.
Yeah.
So I love this too, that Frankie is your girl, Frankie Ashford. And your heroine is actually a young New Yorker, but she is the billionaire. Like, get it, girl. Love that.
Why there's not more of that, I don't understand.
I know. There is, gosh, I can't, her name is totally slipping my head right now. But there is an author who does write them. She writes like moguls and stuff like that. And she's awesome. I'll remember it eventually, but you know, she does that. And I think that's so cool when, you know, authors do that. So I also like the end of your blurb says, you know, Frankie's about to find out what happens when two broken souls find something they didn't believe they were worthy of. And I think, doesn't that just speak so much about the human condition? Like, everybody, no matter what position you're in, if you're a small town, ice cream shop owner, billionaire, New Yorker, fast paced, it doesn't matter. We all have these doubts and things that we battle. So I really think it just all comes full circle. And there's so much that when I was writing Write 10K, if you read the whole book beginning to end, because there is, some anecdotal things in there, and it's a little biographical at parts, not too heavy, but I do share some personal things about my journey, my health, my life, my family. When I do that, by the end, I mean, it was a very emotional thing for me at the end of that book, because I realized I was telling it as if telling all the authors, like, this is your story. Like, everything that we use to develop a proper full arc, like a fully developed arc, all of that is really relevant to how we live our lives, the choices we make, the evolution we make as people, as authors, as moms, wives, husbands, children, siblings, all of it. It's all about the human condition. So I love that your books come back to that, because I think any decent story that is, written properly will have that, whether it's romance, but also, if it's a crime novel, if it's if it's a thriller, it should all come down to the human condition, because that's fiction has to, emulate the reality.
Right. Totally.
So, let's see. All right, so let's talk a little bit about it. You say that it's One Night with Frankie is steamy, right? So what's that?
I always say steamy. I'd say they're steamy because they're not, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on your level of what you're used to, right? I mean, to me, they're steamy. To some people, they're completely, kinky. I don't, that's, to me, is not kinky. To me, this is normal. This is like,
normal steam. This is normal, good, hefty steam.
I mean, maybe not normal. Well, anyway, let's not go into that. But so yes, my books are steamy for the most part, and One Night is probably my steamiest.
Yeah.
Because the story really does revolve around two people that are connecting through sex, but there's more coming, but the sex has to unlock they're kind of stuck in these two little things. So the sex has to bring it out. So it's definitely steamier than my other ones, but yeah, I do call it steamy. I don't know. Is there a hotter word than steamy?
I don't know. I mean, I think steamy's been around for a while. I think it works, like you say,
it's losing its meaning though.
Yeah, well,
now people are defining steamy.
Hard. Like there's, it depends. Like if you're coming off a binge with an author who writes nothing but like, kink club books,
right.
It's gonna, it's all about, it's all relative to where you're coming from with it. But I mean, I enjoy a slow burn, but explosive intimacy scene. Like I do not like a doors closed romance. I am so nosy. I need to be up in everyone's business. What's it look like? What's it feel like? What are they doing? Who's making what sound? What did that mean? I want it all. But I like the effort to get there. I like that slow burn. I like the aftermath of it. Then there's super slow burns. I mean, like super, like I'm like just finishing a book by Pepper Winters, and I mean there was no sex whatsoever between the main characters in that one, but I mean it was a duet, so now it's like sex. But like super slow burn. So I mean there's a lot there that I enjoy, but I don't mind a slow burn, and I actually prefer the like hard to get to intimate scenes rather than like gratuitous ones. So that's just me personally though. And there's times where I'm in moods for other things too. I mean, I think it's healthy to have a variety.
That's what was weird about writing about One Night, because it's a novella. My other books were novels, so I had time to get to it. This one I had to get to it.
They're a lot faster.
But I don't feel, or at least I don't know, some people have told me they don't feel like it's rushed. It makes sense, So I'm like, that was weird, because like usually I have so much buildup, and I do have a little bit of slow burn and anticipation. So it was a completely different vibe. But
Now, when you were writing this, was this before or after you read 10K?
And it was before I actually wrote it. I think I wrote it last year. Just the idea came to me. It was much filthier, much darker when I wrote it originally. A
Mhm,
little too raw. And
mhm.
then yeah, this year I just decided. But I think it was probably around the same time as I was like sprucing it up and getting it ready that I started reading 10K.
Okay, okay. I
Yeah.
just was curious because if you're saying it's a novella, then I'm wondering, because in 10K, I take the whole, all the ingredients of a plot
Hmm.
and I give you the formula to basically say, if you want X amount of words
Yeah.
and Y chapters, here's how you break it
Yeah.
down and space out all these elements so you have that complete arc. And then what's interesting about that is that you can also take it and do, a novella with it,
Right.
which for me personally, I am a very long-winded author. I love to get lost in a description, sometimes too much. My earlier stuff, I'm just like, oh my God, someone shoot this author. Like when I read it, I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I my thing was trying to make things concise now at this stage because it's different generations of readers too. And the younger generation doesn't want hefty books. There's still some people who value them, of course.
Right.
There's, always exceptions, but I do find that what people wanted, the majority of what people wanted 10 years ago is a lot different than what they want now because
Yeah.
we're used to these snippets. I mean, we're used to 1 minute TikToks and, even a YouTube video gets too long for
Yeah.
us now.
Yeah.
So I try to consolidate as much as I can into as few words as possible, which is always good. That's a Hemingway thing too. Say what the best thing with the least amount of words. Um, but 10K helped me understand how to take a story in my head that should be 100,000 words and squeeze it into 35 or less.
Mhm.
And that's something that, I mean, it took me over a decade to figure out how to do that.
I think I had already. I think I was doing like final little edits when I started reading it. So I was like, oh shoot, like had I had this, 2 months ago. My chapters don't exactly follow. I mean, I don't know. I've never really sat there and analyzed it. I've never really
Right.
looked at my arcs because, like I say, I have a story in my head. It kind of, but again, I think the film background, I think I see things like a movie. So I kind of automatically see that. So maybe I do it, maybe I don't. I'm not sure. No one's ever told me my arcs were good or not.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the movie thing for a
Right.
minute
Yeah.
because I think this is so interesting. So when I was I host a retreat behind the keys every year, right? And Pam Godwin's a guest there, and we run Read Between the Wines and everything together. So we're, good friends and everything and colleagues.
Mhm.
And when we first met, she said to me, she's like, you're really good at arcs. And I was like, what? And she's going on and on about like beat sheets. And she studied horror when she started writing, which is always interesting to me where people studied and where they kind of come from with things. I mean, my background's in education. So I was
Right.
super excited to write a book that has basically a writer's curriculum in it.
Right.
Um, but she says to me, you're really good at story arc and beats and all this stuff. And I had like no clue what she was talking about. And then she explained to me, the structure of the plot and this and that. I said, oh, okay. I said,
Right.
I guess I'm good. I have no, idea where it comes from. And it really stuck with me for a while. I started thinking about it. And this is what I came to, which was making me like, it made me smile when I was reading your, background with film and everything. So when we were younger, my family, my dad owned a video store,
Okay.
and it was tiny, Blockbuster was out and stuff at this time. This was a small town video store called Take Five. And every weekend he'd come home with a stack of promo
Right.
tapes, like 20
Yeah.
tapes and I remember like all these movies, like
Mhm.
Pretty Woman, Thelma and Louise, Big, all of these
Yeah.
movies were coming out in this, gap of time. I mean, we must have had it for at least 20 years, I would think.
Wow.
And we'd have to watch these stacks of movies over the weekend. They'd play all weekend long, just movies, movies, movies. And we'd have to give our opinion. What is it? How is it? How many do we order? Was it good? Was it blah? Like, are people in our neighborhood going to connect with
Right.
this? All of these decisions. So I think the reason I understand a story arc so well is because I've watched so many movies that I now understand. You could take Pretty Woman and slide it over The Godfather if
Yeah.
you wanted to, or Jaws,
Yeah.
and it will just a story arc is a story arc, is like the elements are always the
Yeah.
same. It's the ingredients have a little more, a little less, a little timid spice. It's all about adjusting the ingredients, but it's always the same
Yeah,
recipe.
yeah, and I think the more you watch movies or TV shows or read, you see it, you know it without even knowing you know it. You just automatically apply it because that's just the way, and you'll know when it's not working. You'll know when there's a movie that isn't following the snap, or
Yeah.
you'll feel like, wait a minute, something's off.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
unless you're Quentin Tarantino, you're usually struggling with
and
that.
even then, even he follows some. He has his own arc,
It's
but like
not
if
a
you watch
linear arc, but it's,
exactly,
I forget what
yeah.
that's called when it's a jump
Oh,
around arc.
don't even
Time
ask.
Traveler's Wife is another one that does that.
Yeah,
For the most part, it's always a linear arc. I mean,
yeah,
there's very
yeah,
exceptional people out there who can do the movies and stories like that.
yeah.
And I think, a lot of times, I know personally, like I'm dyslexic, so I'm a very slow reader and I read way slower than I can write.
Mhm.
So for me to read a book is an undertaking, like I need to have really quiet time to myself. I need to have like that, like everything has to be in order in my life for me to actually dive into a
Yeah,
book.
yeah,
And when I don't have that time, because I mean, now I used to at one point I read 400 novels in a year, and now I'm lucky if I get 12 in a year.
yeah,
So I'm always working to up that. But I think that it's important for authors to know it's okay to supplement with movies. Like there's still
totally.
something to learn there for sure. I mean, and even I remember when I was, a very green author in the beginning, being very bothered by fan fiction. Fan fiction really, really bothered me.
Yeah,
It was like an integrity issue with me. And it took me a while to understand, like, okay, when people are calling something like, oh, it's a Cinderella story, it's rags to
right.
riches, it's this, it's that. When we learn those things, you understand. And like you said, as you watch, you see, things repeating, repeating,
Yeah,
repeating, repeating. I mean, you can watch almost any sitcom that runs for more than a few seasons.
yeah,
You will see like, oh, this is the episode with this
yeah,
miscommunication. This is the
yeah,
episode with this one. This is where this happens. And you can almost predict it because it's all like a Cinderella story. It's just different tropes that we're putting all these things again, these situations. It's the same situation, different players.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
think it's really, good to do that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about writing.
Mhm.
So you say that your greatest strengths are voice and dialogue and writing relatable characters,
Yeah,
which I think is when you get to the point where you go, okay, I hear my voice, I know what it is. It's
yeah,
a really empowering moment in your writing career, don't you
it
think?
is. It is. And I didn't think I did that until a few readers said, I could hear this character, or I could hear, and it was so funny because in my head, I really do, I see them, I hear them, and it's even little words. You'll say, no, he wouldn't say it this way. He'd say it this
Right?
way, like, and then, so like, my readers will like a character and they'll say, oh, when he's like, they genuinely believe these people exist because there's little things. Sometimes you'll read dialogue and you'll be like, this, no one talks like this, no one would say this, or so I never realized I did it. And I think it always comes back to the film. I think originally a long time ago I wanted to be a screenwriter. So
Hmm.
screenwriter is pretty much
Yeah.
dialogue. I mean, yes, you have context, but I mean, for the most part, this is how they're saying it, what they're saying, how they're saying it, right? So
That's super interesting that you actually draw that comparison too, because I am going to recommend for any author who has the time to take one of their novels,
mm,
download an app. You can get them pretty cheap, get the app on your computer for a screenplay
yeah,
and transition one of your novels that you know by heart, like one of your older
right.
ones that you kind of really, spend a ton of time on, you
Mm-hmm.
really know it inside and out. Take one of them and write it into a screenplay. And the reason I suggest this is because I did this with Almost Priest, which is the first McCullough
Right.
Mountain. And that's an old one. I mean, that's what kind of started.
That was my first one of yours.
Really?
Yeah. And my mother, I had to share it with her. I was like, Mommy, this reminds me, my mother is obsessed with Thornbirds.
Oh my gosh,
Richard,
yes.
Richard Chamberlain was like her, so I was like, Mommy, this book. And then she's like, oh, she got all excited. And then when you referenced it, I was like, okay.
You know, That's so cool because I gotta tell you, I was reading The Thornbirds the summer before I wrote that, and I
Mhm.
broke my Kindle because I was
Oh
like,
wow.
well, because the end, and I was like,
I've never read it. I've
well, I
never
won't
read it, but
spoil
I've heard.
anything, but I
Right.
was so angry at the end. I
Yeah.
took my Kindle and I threw it into the yard and it
Oh, God.
bounced straight into the street.
Okay,
And I
now I
was
have to read
like
it.
furious. And I'm like, well, now I just need a good romance with someone who's a priest or almost a priest or something. I need to,
Right.
there's an
Right.
itch that needs to be scratched.
Yeah.
And I mean, like that is definitely, Thornbirds definitely had an impact on that story. I mean, come on, it's, yes, your mom needs to read it. Like,
I know. I think I know how it ends. I think my mother was also upset, but yeah, I think she may have.
Unacceptable ending for a romance lover. Acceptable.
But yeah, I should probably read it one day.
But you know, the voice
Mm,
is like such an important thing. And I took that was originally, Almost Priest was originally called Sacred Waters. I mean, it's been around for a long time,
right.
been through publishing
Right.
houses and you know, all of this, like multiple contracts,
Yeah.
because it's one of my oldest stories. Um, so when I recovered it, I was like, you know what, let me try to play with a screenplay with this. And I wrote it into that. And it by doing that, you really, it's a great way to analyze your dialogue skill because with a screenplay, you're not the director, you are just the writer. So you have to step back from all of this exterior influence of how people read. You know, you can do a very minor bit of body language, but
Yeah.
really your characters should speak for themselves in the words they say. And
Mhm.
I felt like, I mean, and I wrote that screenplay because I was literally skimming through the book. Um, so you know, there's a book, How to Write a Screenplay, buy it, read it if you're an author, sit down with one of your books when you have a chance, put it into screenplay. I promise it'll make you a better writer because you're going to have this bare bones skeleton of the dialogue of your novel. And you're going to go, oh, I see
Yeah.
all the weak
Yeah.
spots
Yeah.
and all the strength right now. And it makes you, that was a like fluke of a lesson that I like did with myself, and it really impacted stronger word choice and dialogue writing, taking out those wooden you know, dialogues and putting that, like, you know, putting body into the actual language
Yeah.
rather than waiting for, you know, the body language to speak or the setting to speak for the characters.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's really empowering for our characters to have that.
Yeah. For sure.
So you say that one of your struggles is comparing yourself to others, and you struggle with anxiety for remaining relevant. And that's huge.
It
It's
is.
so,
I know there's a few moments in Write 10K where I always used to make fun of my mom. She would read all these like kind of self-help books in the 90s, right? Like Oprah and all that stuff. And she would always go, oh, light bulb moment, or, you know, and I would laugh at her. But here I was, right, reading your book and literally stopping and going, oh, yeah, light bulb. Like, there was a few times, I'm not gonna lie, there's a few times I cried. There was a few times I got so emotional because I connected and I was like, she gets it, you know? It wasn't like,
oh,
I've
I
read
get
books that were about the craft, and so it was different this time, and I would read it and it would totally come to me, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, she gets it. She gets what she's saying. But how can I say this? It was like, that's why I feel like I have to reread it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's so much material, and I feel like um, when you talked about, you know, comparing and social media, and that's it 100%. I mean, my
yeah.
ego just, oh yeah, look at this, oh look at her, look at him, you know, and I know I shouldn't be doing it, and even after reading it, and I'm like, this is not healthy. And I was like, you know, I think you said something about don't go onto social media first thing, or
End
you
of
know,
the day.
I did that for
Put
about
something
three
with the
weeks.
check, but like literally get on, get off, and
Yeah,
don't touch
and
it.
I did it for a bit, and now I find myself doing it again, and I'm like, no, stop that, you know. And it's really tough, and it's silly because I know so many authors. I know they're going through the same things we are. You
Yeah.
know, it's, but yet I don't know. Maybe, like I said, I always say it's my ego. I
And
can't
I
help
think
but do it. And then that
Yeah.
creates the anxiety, which just,
Yep. And I think that the more people you talk to, you realize it's the, starting authors are actually really healthy. They're very mentally healthy.
yeah,
They're so optimistic
yeah.
and they're going to change the world and they're going to,
We're like,
be
I'm
bestseller and hit the
fantastic.
lists
Yeah,
and don't change
yeah,
my words. Don't tell me how to edit. It's perfect. This is my baby. I
yeah,
wish I could get back into that like
yeah.
headspace. And I'm not, I say it in 10K too. We're not knocking them. We
No,
are jealous.
jealous,
Because
100%.
I remember that headspace
Yeah,
and it was lovely. It was so
yeah,
comforting. It was like a little womb of safety to live in.
yeah,
But you have to come out and then you realize like, there's bills and ads and marketing and competition and all this stuff. And I think that the more you speak to authors, not the new authors, but
yeah,
authors who are still
yeah.
green and seasoned authors,
Mhm.
no matter who you're talking to, they're all going through a struggle.
For
They're
sure.
all dealing with juggling everything we need to juggle. And they really do. The comparison is tough. It's toxic and it's tough. And I mean, there's times where I really admire your idols start to cause toxicity in you because you say, oh my gosh, this author is so inspirational with their brand, their marketing. I like what they're running for ads.
Yeah,
You're so on board with everything they're doing. And then all of a sudden it's like a switch just flip,
yeah,
and you're like everything that they're doing that's good starts just
yeah,
breaking you down.
yeah.
And it's not an intentional thing. I think it's a
No,
human thing to have
yeah,
that response, and you start getting really down on yourself, which brings me to the next question that we had talked about, which is burnout. And I
yeah.
had asked you, this was really interesting. I had asked you if you had experienced burnout before. And do you want to talk about your answer for a minute? Because
Yeah,
it's
so that's it. A couple of years ago, I think my girls were about 3 and 5. I mean, it was, or maybe before that. I was going through a lot. I'd get angry at stupid things. You're making supper and things don't go, and I would just blow up. And I tried to talk to my husband, and he wouldn't quite get it. And at one point, I don't know, I was losing my mind. I was talking to my mother, and she had heard about this book, and it's by these French authors, and it was about parental burnout. And
Mhm.
I was like, well, wow. So I started reading it, and it was my life. It was literally this idea that our generation, especially, we're with social media, Pinterest, whatever, we're setting ourselves up for failure because we're comparing ourselves to something that doesn't actually exist.
Like a Martha Stewart or, yeah.
Everyone has that Pinterest mom friend, right? Who makes
Yeah.
the perfect cakes, who makes the perfect parties, and you're sitting there going, I can barely make supper. What am I doing wrong? And
Hmm.
so this need to be like, and I'm a perfectionist, like unbelievably so. So it was just feeding into that. So anyway, so once I addressed it and realized it was a thing and it existed, I dealt with it. I realized I don't need to be perfect. I need to be good and for my kids, and same thing. So that's why when I read about the writer's burnout, it's the same concept, right? Of how
Yeah.
you think you have to be up here, but you just have to be where you are and content with
Have
what
to
you're
be
doing.
somewhere sustainable for you.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
so and balanced,
Yes.
and balanced mentally, physically,
Yeah.
balance your business, balance your inspiration, your muse. All of it has to be balanced.
Yeah.
And what I loved when I was reading your notes before our interview was that you said, I became aware of how I was feeling, like I wasn't good enough. And that, like, I don't know that I actually put that in 10K, but I think I said it in a roundabout way, in a way
Yes.
more pages.
Yes.
And you just said it so perfectly right there, that when we are as authors feeling like I'm just not good enough, that low opinion of ourselves,
Mhm.
that is one of the screaming sirens of you're probably burnt out.
Yeah.
Because and the best thing you can do is, and this I do say, get the hell out of there. Just
Yes.
run, get
Yeah.
out of there.
Yeah.
Don't change, because you meet people who are really down in the dumps like that, who have really just, they've just let themselves get burnt out, and every morning they try to pick themselves up and they end up lower and lower and lower, and they're just dropping down, and their opinions dropping down, and all of a sudden you hear them say, I'm giving up writing, I'm
Yeah.
not doing it anymore. And it's because they've lost the sight, basically, to make a realistic decision for their well-being.
Yeah.
They're not looking at the reality of it. They're looking at this misconception that's been poisoned with doubt and feelings of competition that really don't exist. I mean, I tell everyone it's not that there's not room at the top for everyone. Like, just because, let's say you're, designing a clothing brand and you're like, oh darn, like this already exists, so and so just came out with a clothing brand, so what, there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of clothing brands. Just because someone did one doesn't mean there's not going to be another. Same thing with books. So it's not that there's not room at the top, but it is a very competitive industry, and you don't have to be in competition with your peers, but we are all competing for the same thing. And the issue is, the penthouse is an endless eternal floor. There's a very teeny tiny door though.
Yeah.
And to get through that door, your job as an author who wants sustainable success is to have in your hands the material you need the moment you're called upon to present it. So when you have that, networking moment with someone from a big six publishing house or something, and they say, well, what are you working on now? You are ready to go, oh my gosh, let me send you this manuscript. And it is polished and ready. And all you have to do is pull the trigger on it. And there's your door opening. And if you slip into the top, you're there. You made it. But so important that we don't get bogged down by these feelings of, am I good enough? Thinking about our competitors, comparing ourselves to each other. Because like I said, I could follow someone who I find totally inspirational as far as their brand, their business practices, their ads running, everything. And I want to learn from them. And how do we learn? We observe.
Yep.
It's a natural way to learn. It's a smart way to learn. But the minute that switch flips, that's when we have to go, okay, it's time to unfollow. And when they keep occurring, because, everything's an algorithm and now the social bots have it down, like, you love this person, we're going to keep showing it to you, even though you followed them. We're going to keep gorging you on it. And it becomes an unhealthy thing because it's starting to make you feel, you're looking at someone who's been at it forever.
Right.
And, it's Zoe York is an author who also writes some nonfiction for authors. Excellent resource. She's, brilliant. She was at our retreat one year, just a joy to have. Her mind is just a wealth of knowledge. And I quote her in 10K because she says, privilege weighs really heavy on publishing success. And you don't know if someone you're watching who seems like they have it all together and they're getting all these deals and having these big things happen, you don't know if they remortgage their house for it. You don't know if they have a connection in the publishing industry. Their uncle might work there, or you don't know. You don't know if their marriage is suffering because they're just working hundreds of hours a week. You don't know. So it's really important that we keep that reality check happening, which is part of why in 10K we talk about, in the very, very beginning, we talk about, number one, what burnout is, but right away, what reality is, accepting the reality and taking back the control. And these are all things we have to work on as humans, I think, in a lot of industries, especially in ours. You talk about, you would like advice on time management, and you say that you always have time to write. Why? Because we love the writing. We love the writing.
Oh my gosh, I could write all day long.
I know, it's like, I was a workaholic. So for me we wanted to go to the beach this week, right? So I told my neighbor, I said, okay, I'm going to work overtime Monday to Wednesday so that I could take Thursday off. So I worked a little overtime, and I told her, I was like, I'm literally like Scarface on a bender at this point, because I'm just like, all of the work, like I'm so stimulated by it. I love what I do. The writing is, never the issue. I always say, the writing is the marriage. It's creator and the art. That's the marriage. It's publishing that's like the whore in the background who's interfering.
I love that. I love when you said that. That was like, I laughed out loud at that one. That was
but it is like,
totally is 100%.
It's all the marketing and the business of publishing that needs, it's all this noise. And why aren't you giving me attention?
I even say it's also the mother-in-law that comes over and then starts giving you more stuff to do.
Yeah, it's the mother-in-law, it's the in-law, it's all the things. If you could just have your happy in love obsessive marriage between art and creator, perfect. But that's not, like I always think of Colin Firth in Love Actually, when he's like, in his little sweater, in his like, the
Yeah.
French countryside with his little beautiful Portuguese
Right.
maid, and
Yeah.
she's bringing him coffee, and he's just like, I want to live in that. That's what I want to do,
Yeah.
and it's just not at all reality
Not
of
at
the
all.
job, but we can all fantasize.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I'm really envious that you have a support group, mastermind group.
Yes.
And so yours is Romancestagram.
Well,
And
it's yeah, I think that's what they named it. It was a fellow indie author who I became friends with, and then and I was messaging her and I was dumping all my crap on her, and then she said, you know what, come and join our group. And we're about 30 authors. Most I think are just in the background. They don't really participate that often, but we have about a 15 or so, and there's some bookstagram, bloggers in there too. So it's not just authors.
there's a lot that
Uh,
you can link with the bloggers too. I
It's
find them to be a
fantastic. And a
great
lot of them are starting to write their own books. So they're asking us for advice, and we're asking, and it's just, I mean, you can talk about anything there. You can, and it's all the same issues. They understand,
And
like,
isn't it? It's all the same issues. I'm going to tell you right now, and anyone who's listening that needs to hear this,
yeah,
if you are in a group that is negative, kind of pisses all over the
yeah,
place when someone has a win,
yeah,
get out.
yeah,
Get out, run, don't look back.
yeah,
Because when I first signed, we were told, I won't disclose who it was, but we were told as, signing with this house that we had to be a part of this group, and it
okay,
was back in Yahoo days, like it was
okay,
Yahoo group. And
yeah,
it was the most toxic virtual environment I'd ever been into. And I would say, like, I'm struggling with this, or, how do I do this? And it was very clicky, and they wouldn't share. And then I signed with another house, which was wonderful. That was actually Secret Cravings, which closed in 2015, unfortunately. But when they were like, you have to be in our author group, I was like, oh no. And I did, and everyone was like, here's knowledge, here's something, and they post like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, you guys, I did this test, I spent my money, but let me share with you what I did so you don't have to spend yours. Here's the mistakes, here's all my analytics.
yeah,
That's who you want to surround yourself
yeah,
with. So whether it's an Instagram group or a Facebook group, I think it's so powerful to have that group.
yeah,
And I tell everyone, if you don't have that group, hop on 10K, the right 10K in a day on Instagram. It's small and growing because this is all brand new from, just since May. I think we have like somewhere between like 500 and 1,000
yeah,
like followers right now. But we're working to get that, the interactions up there. And I want people to be able to make those connections through social and then pull off and say, hey, let's group up here. Let's have this conversation. Let's have that.
yeah,
So I think it's really good to have that.
yeah, 100%.
Um, let's see. Last but not least, so you said if we had time, what would you want to explain a method for from Write 10K in a day that you think would be helpful to yourself or others to learn? And you had said that you wanted more information about finding your number one objective. So
Yeah, I
let's
mean,
talk about it.
I know. Okay, I cheated. I know in the beginning of the book, there's a lot of, okay, now I want you to sit down and like write this
No,
out. I always go, okay, I'll do this another time because I want to get like, I have to keep going,
yeah, no, and
Now
I tell you, you can do that in the book.
yeah, I feel like I was cheating a little bit.
Yeah.
And with like the number one objective, I was like, oh God. Like, I mean, and yours, I literally, yeah, I just want to be happy. I want
Yeah.
to be able to write and share my words with others. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to be J.K. Rowling, but I want to be happy doing it. I want to be, and I want to get some happiness from it. But then I was like,
And
I
you
don't.
want to be happy if you're putting all of your happiness in this part, like if your job is happy,
Yeah.
you need it to be happy in a sustainable way that
Yes.
your outside of your job life is happy as well. Family, friends, all the happiness in a balance. And that's just me. I mean, you're welcome to have at it. Like, I think happiness is a very natural number one objective, but maybe it's not yours. I use a few examples in 10K where I talk about like maybe you're this like beautiful waxed,
Yeah.
goddess of a man who wants an Olympic pool in his backyard and a
Yeah.
Mercedes Benz and a mansion. And if that's what does it for you, that's what does it for you. So it's no one's judging what your number one objective is, but how do you find it? So first, reading Write 10K in a day is the best way to understand what we mean by number one objective. So if you're curious a little more about that, we talk about it from beginning to the end of the book. It's constantly referenced because it is so important and relevant to your success. yours, not mine. Everything's unique and tailored. Two, if you get the workbook for Write 10K in a Day. So I just want to show this real quick before I move on. So behind me, where is it? Right behind me, you'll see there's the hardback sitting up there. But we have this super savvy price saver because, you know, authors are always on a budget. This thick, it's paper, it's, you know, black and white, it's the thrifty version. Same content is in there, just black and white where the hardback's color. So this one's very affordable. You get that. Then you have these two other, where's camera? Two, you know, nice and neat little, they all fit together on a shelf, super useful. What I wanted to show you was one of them is actually the, you have a planner, which is, that applies, I'm really bad with this camera here. That applies all the things that we talked about in Write 10K as far as time management, a lot of that stuff's applied there. But the workbook is actually really great because it goes exactly with the chapters of the book. So if you, did you get the workbook as well?
No, I had the ebook.
Okay.
So I was like highlighting, but I had to take notes on the side.
The workbook might be a nice refresher for you because the workbook, it follows the exact same format as the chapters. So it walks through and it gives you some like discussion questions, and it has some activities in there about identifying your number one objective. So it's all activity based. Like for instance, let me see if I can pull some up. Like this is some discussion. Oh, there's your number one objective. Like it's a whole worksheet that basically tells you how to get through that and figure it out. There's also when we talk about doing like your time audit, see where you're wasting time, that's in there. All those worksheets are in there.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the number one objective, because I always like to give a little something that's in the book to help other people out. So the first thing that you want to do with your number one objective is you want to think about what your values are, your interests, and your skills. You know, obviously your skills are writing, your skills are film, you have these storytelling skills. That's the obvious one because you've come to this point from following your career path and all that. But your interest and values, that's what's really important. So you want to take your interest and values and just start a list. Start listing them out. You know, keep that list for like a week or a couple of days or 2 weeks or a month, whatever. Just keep jotting them down. Put it on a Post-it, like, you know, the big, write that post and keep writing what your values are, what your interests are, right? Once you have that, you have your collection of data on your subject. The subject is you. So the next thing you're going to do is analyze the data. So you're going to do that through reflection, which is basically either meditation or journaling. And when I say meditation, I don't mean like you have to sit down and, you know, Indian style and ring your bells and you don't have to do that. Go for a walk, get offline, put headphones in if you need to, zone out on you and really just keep coming back to it. I'm thinking about me right now. I'm thinking about my values. I'm thinking about this. Now, what you want to do when you're doing this as well is also keep a list of all of your titles. So your titles might be author, entrepreneur, wife, mom, maybe you have siblings, you know, daughter, like all of these things, all of your titles, keep all of them in mind, because when you come up with your number one objective, you want to make sure that it can apply to every single one equally, because balance, again, it has to be equal. Then you're going to start defining who you are. And you're defining who you are by what you value, what your interests are, and how you identify yourself. And I want you to think back as well to your childhood. You know, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Like I wanted to be a picketer. And we passed people on strike. They were all picketing. And I was like, that's what I want to be, daddy. And, you know, I mean, like, well, why did I want to be that? I think it was because they looked important. They had something to say and a big old sign with writing on it that people were reading. Well, it's not too far off from what I'm doing now. Like I have something to say. I have a bunch of big old signs out there telling people this is what I have to say. And, you know, but think back to what those original, when you were a child, you were so pure and innocent, and your goals were just totally by a whim of what your like gut, we read our gut instincts so much easier back then because we didn't care what people thought, you know? So think back to when you were a child. Then you're going to list your assumed goals. And what I mean by assumed goals are let's say you want to hit a New York Times bestselling list. That's a really common goal with authors. Why?
Mhm.
Why do you, this is a goal. This is like, maybe that's your thing. For me, when I was writing, it was always a goal, like write 10 books. And in my head, when I got to 10 books, it was going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. I was going to be able to like retire from any second jobs, focus full time on writing. 10 books that was the money maker for me. And then I like published 10, 11, 12, and I was like, nothing is different. Like, so think about what these assumed goals mean to you. Why do you want to hit, if it's a New York Times bestseller list, why do you want to hit that? What does it actually mean to you? Is it, the accolade? Is it seeing your name in the paper? Is it to prove something to someone in your life, to prove something to yourself? Why is it proving something to yourself? What exactly is it proving? So you get down to the why of what these assumed goals are, these big things that you're trying to reach. And then you ask yourself why again and again and again until you get to the very rock bottom of what the motive is. And this is probably sounding a little familiar because we talk about it in Write 10K an awful lot, that every character, every main character, you're the main character of your life, has to have a GMC, which is your goal, your motivation, and your conflict. So you take your goals and you get down to the nitty gritty of what's motivating you to get to those goals. What is the motive there? Because it's not like I want a big house because I like, a big house. It's what does that big house mean to you if that's one of your goals? What does that list mean to you? It all comes down to an emotional need that is motivating you. What is that need? You have to keep digging to get to that. And then there's the conflict in a GMC. What's the
Right.
conflict? What's the obstacle preventing you from getting your goals? So this is where we start getting into the importance of acceptance, which was early on in 10K. And it's about accepting like your natural rhythm. you know um Everyone has these things, like maybe, you're I remember being a teenager and looking at beauty ads and going, God, I want, hair like her, or, a complexion like that, or I want that figure. And it took me years to realize I was better off, mentally healthier and prettier, embracing the real me. And we have to really get down to accepting our natural rhythm of things, accepting who we really are, like maybe when I was younger, I used to always think in my head when I'm an adult, I was going to every like vision I had of myself as an adult mom, wife, woman, business person, didn't matter. I always had high heels on. And I always had a cute ruffly apron if I was cooking. Like talk about like tapping into some DS fantasy. Like um but I mean like I was very like that's how I always envisioned myself. And really like that's not my natural rhythm. Like my natural rhythm is very like relaxed, easy, no frills. I get very stressed out about just having to put on makeup,
Right. Right.
so it's really about accepting your natural rhythm. And sometimes that's a big pill to swallow. Like some people need to actually go to therapy and stuff and work it out to accept who they really are, but getting cozy with yourself, figuring out what makes you weird and rolling in it, like
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
helps you get there. And then once you go through all of those steps to get to that, bare bones, you're really doing some self-discovery work here. And this is hard work. I mean, this could take years to do this. It depends how heavily, I mean, you could also say, I'm going on a retreat next summer and I'm just going to focus all on me. And this is what I want to identify to, because this isn't just going to help your career. Your number one objective is going to help everything.
Yeah.
So then you prioritize your life accordingly. You nix everything that's unnecessary. I call it useless stress. Figure
See,
out like,
that's another one. That's another one. I can't figure out what's. I mean, I can't figure out what's useless because I feel like everything I have to do is actually necessary.
why,
So
and it comes down to asking the why, right?
yeah, okay, yeah,
Because
okay.
like, okay, if you're going to be someone who's going to stress out about like, the dishes in the sink, but not just the dishes in the sink, having the sink like polished to a pristine shine. Okay, why? Like, let's say your husband wants you to watch a movie with him or something, and you're pushing off that moment because those dishes, like, that's unnecessary stress. And that's something internal that you got to work through to let go of. Like, I used to be completely like OCD with labels, and every cabinet had a label in
Yeah,
it. And I mean, like, really, like, and what it was doing was costing me so much because I would put that expectation on other people and it was about me. And I had to really work through that. So once I was able to say, okay, what's my number one objective? Like, is this making me happy, or is sitting down and watching the movie with my husband making me happy? Is writing making me happy, or is having my name on a list when I had to do a million times more marketing than actual creating to get there, like maybe that list isn't so important if
Right.
I'm enjoying my career, which I spend so many hours a week doing. So it's all about measuring and nixing the unnecessary, cutting out the, useless stress. If it's really useless, like if it's something that's you're obligated to do, you've made a commitment, other people are depending on you, you need this to for your family life and home life and everything to function, for your business to function. If this is actually required but unpleasant, okay, then it's like the frog you have to eat. But if it's not, if it really doesn't have a return on it, get rid of it. Forgive yourself. Say, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. Or I'm going to cut back. I'm going to try to quit this, even if it seems like it's something totally helpful. Then you're going to think in terms of not problems, but solutions. So it's the goal, motivation, conflict. Well, stop thinking about, I have all these problems. I'm not hitting this. I'm not doing this. I'm not achieving this goal because this problem's in the way and this problem and this problem. Stop thinking about that and start thinking about the solution, like zero in on what exactly can I do to overcome this? Like, and super focus on it. If it's the matter of, I'm not getting the exposure I want. Okay, well, what's a quick solution? Run some ads. That's easy. Run some ads. You know why people don't run ads? Because it's time consuming and expensive. But if you take a month to figure out how to do it, and you figure out a way to cut something out in your life, maybe don't go to dinner that month or something, and take that $100 you would have spent at a restaurant and put it into your sale ads or something. It's all about solutions. There's always a solution. You just have to figure it out. Once you figure it out, you've now got a roadmap to get where you want. And the thing is once you have your number one objective, like if you identify it as, it's happiness, then you're going to say everything. That is like the ultimate question for everything. I'm going to do this. Why? Is it going to make me happy? You know, is it going to make me happy? If it's not going to make me happy, I'm not going to do it. Whatever your number one objective is, if your number one objective is, I want to be a bestseller. Well, is this helping me? And I don't suggest that being your number one objective because it's too isolated to just work, and it has to be balanced with life. And then because you're the main character, you have to continuously adapt and evolve. And that's what it's all about. It's that human condition again, right? Like adapting and growing, and that growth is what we're after. So I hope that helps a little bit with that.
That does.
Now you have to put it into practice, right? That's
I think exactly. I think it's the introspective part of it that I always have trouble with. This sitting there and like dissecting myself. That is a little bit touchy, and I think a lot of people, especially writers, I think have issues with that because they're used to projecting and looking at others and not having to go inside, right?
I think that if you're not able to like still and silence, like if you're not able to get like still and quiet and silence and focus, like if you're going to lose that train of thought, your brain's going to wander to all the, I got to get the girls ready for this. I got to do this, don't forget to pick this up at the clean, whatever it is. If you're going to be distracted by life, I suggest doing a journal then. Go get a pretty book, a pretty little book for yourself. Make it something that you love, and tell yourself every day at some point, whether it's when you're having your coffee or it's waiting, in the car for an appointment or whatever it is, or use your phone and journal this stuff out. Set a timer for just 10 minutes and do a stream of conscious writing, activity where you're just punching out this information about yourself, or writing it by hand or typing it. Set a timer, have it go, and depend on that. And that would really be a great way to do it. And you'd be amazed what you can accomplish and figure out about yourself by just giving 10 minutes, even for a couple of days. You'll get to it. But that's about an hour. So I think that it's been an amazing conversation. If you want to reach Mimi, you can find her at Mimi Flood Author. And she's very active on Instagram and on Facebook as well, correct?
Yep. I think it's the same.
Yeah. So I think that This was great. I mean, I feel like I talked a lot.
No, I feel like I have like, well, there's so much to talk about. That's the thing, that we could have gone out for like so many more hours. I mean, like the book is, I mean, like I mentioned, there's a few people that in that Instagram group that I mentioned it to, and a few people got it, and one of them actually is still on break. She's taken a few months off of
Oh, good.
social just to reconnect with her or herself. So I mean, it's had a profound impact on a bunch of people, and and I'm not BSing. It really is a game changer, and there's so much, and like you said, there's so much we could talk about. Oh, I would never get bored of talking about this stuff. That's what
Oh
I
my
loved
God.
about it. I mean, really, no, it was amazing. And I mean, even my husband now knows your name because I said, well, Lydia says this, and Lydia, says we should do this, and then he said, well, what does Lydia say? What does Lydia suggest? So we have a. I want to make
I
t-shirts.
think that that's amazing. I think it's just I love the fact that, because every time, whether we're writing fiction or nonfiction, it's always you're so desperate to make that, relative connection, like to
Because
really
you can, it's
relate with the reader.
writing is it's so lonely, right? I mean, people don't realize. They think you're on social, so it's no, but it's lonely. And so
It is lonely and
when
it
you
doesn't have to
it
be.
shouldn't, especially not nowadays with like everything we have. It really shouldn't, but it still feels that way sometimes. So
Yeah, it can get that way. And I think that, it's it's really a great thing to get those mastermind groups or, whatever you want to call them, like your author buddy
yeah,
group, whatever it is that you want to
yeah,
call it,
yeah.
have that support system. And don't be afraid to have multiple ones, because if one turns out to be a dud or people get busy,
Mhm.
I mean, people have relatives that get sick or, grandbabies or whatever, some exciting life event that kind of pulls them away. And all of a sudden, I know because I started writing in 2007 that when I got down to it, I had made this amazing connection with all of these, great romance authors. The majority of them were women, and there was just this awesome female, group of people that I loved. And
Mhm.
I mean, in 2015, it was like publishing houses were dropping like flies. You lost Alora's Cave, Sam Hain, Secret Cravings, all of these small presses, and a lot of authors were starting out there. And there was no such thing as a hybrid back then.
Right.
And if you were an indie back then, you weren't really invited to sign next to the traditionally published.
Mhm.
So there was still a stigma. And I mean, now indies rocking the house. Like they're just amazing. What a bunch of go-getters and
Right.
hustlers. I mean, like I get exhausted like watching the indie authors. Like they are killing it.
Yeah.
But, a lot of my peer group, my colleagues disappeared. They all went back to other jobs. When their publishing houses closed, they shut up shop. There was a lot of disputes about rights being returned on work.
Mhm.
And I mean, it was a very problematic time. And it was terrifying for me. Like I'm a hybrid now and I'm still with, I have books with Penguin Random House, but like all my smaller contracts are gone. Either, they folded or they've been absorbed because I took the rights back or whatever. And I'm indie and with traditional. And it is hard. I mean, I lost a lot of friends. So definitely have multiple groups of authors to connect to. Never stop sharing your knowledge, supporting other people. Take the time, because all of a sudden people could just whoop, disappear, and that's when I think it gets lonely, when other people get
Yeah.
busy or they're not in a writing stage right now, but you are, and
Yeah.
finding out who to connect to like that. So
For sure.
that's where I think it's definitely worthwhile to invest in having those connections. So,
And that's
you
why
know,
the book, that's why the book is also like, if you don't have the group, well, at least you can read about and get some useful advice, and you realize that,
yeah.
everybody's going through the same stuff.
And
So
I mean, like, I'd love, maybe down the road, we'll start a group in Write 10K, like actually open a Write 10K group. Right now, it's just one more thing for me to manage. And if you read the book,
right.
I'm very stingy with my social media
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I'm like, limit it, automate it, limit it to as little as possible. Get in there for 10 minutes at the end of the day and
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if there's enough demand for it down the line, I could see that happening, just giving people like a meeting place to post questions, no promotion, which I know there's other ones like that, but maybe
Yeah.
there's a group of people who don't have access to that. So I think that that would be something to think about, and definitely something that I have thought about. It is a possibility down the road. But I can't wait to read One Night with Frankie.
I can't
I'm
wait for you to
super
read
excited.
it.
I'm so excited. I have to finish my Pepper Winters book.
Go for it.
Then I
Absolutely.
have one after that, but I put you right behind that one. So I'm super excited to read it. And this was lovely. It
This was
was so nice
fantastic.
finally getting to talk to you like in semi-person.
Right.
And we'll be sure to share the video and everything with everyone else when it comes, once we get it uploaded and
Can't
everything.
wait.
Okay.
Can't wait. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you. And I will talk to you soon. Good luck with everyone. Everyone, make sure that you go out and follow Mimi Flood.
And Lydia.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.